Good morning, everyone. It's afternoon here in Kuala Lumpur. I'm actually in Kuala Lumpur in the city. So it's a pleasure to be here today with all of you. Firstly, I'd like to thank U3A South Africa for inviting me to speak on music in Islam and to connect with engaged lifelong learners such as your good selves this morning. Special thanks to Caroline for reaching out to me to be with all of you today. My topic is music in Islam, a Malaysian perspective. I think it would be presumptuous of me to think that I can present the culture and practice of music among the estimated 2 billion Muslims who live all over the world, but I can somewhat authoritatively speak on music in Islam in Malaysia. My objective in this presentation is to provide you with an understanding of the status, concept, and main discussion themes surrounding music in Islam. I will speak about these and some of the implications that music in Islam has on music and music education in Malaysia. Of course, my work and my home is in Malaysia, so I can speak best about the context of music in Islam in Malaysia. At the end of my presentation, I will share with you some efforts in Malaysia at bridging music and Islam. A little bit about me. I'm a music educator, and my entire tertiary education has been in music education. And I taught at the university for 35 years before retiring 2 years ago. I did not study theology. My interest in music in Islam started 37 years ago when I attended the interview for a position at my university, the position of a lecturer, that is. So during the interview, I was asked by the chair of the panel of interviewers why I wanted to work in a field which is clearly not approved of in Islam. I remember thinking that I had never heard anything so preposterous before and responded so. So I didn't really expect to get the job after that, of course, but I did, somehow I did. So years later, when I had the opportunity to do my PhD, I knew already that I wanted to learn more about music in Islam. As to why investigate the status of music in Islam? Firstly, it's personal. I'm Muslim and I try my best to be a good Muslim. Sometimes I'm not so successful. But I want to be sure that whatever I do is not against the teachings of Islam. So, and of course, I also want to earn an honest living. Besides personal, it's also professional. I started a music teacher program at my university, and I worked with students who were going to become music teachers and educate children and others. And I wanted to do the right thing by them and make a difference in their and others' lives. Okay, so we'll start with the status of music in Islam. The status of music in Islam is controversial, with the controversy over its practice and use possibly existing even from the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So the verdict on music in Islam is various, depending on, among others, type of music, niyat, or intention and context. So the verdict would be either haram, forbidden, makruh or jais, that's neither forbidden nor recommended, or in Malaysia, the National Council of Fatwa. Fatwa is verdict or rulings on matters regarding Islam. So the ruling for music is harus. So what harus is not sinful if practiced, but not rewarded if it is not practiced. So it's slightly different from makruh and jais. Of course, the ultimate verdict would be, the ultimate verdict of permissible, which is halal. I don't see it anywhere in the literature. So basically, when we are talking about the status of music in Islam, it is with many people saying it is prohibited, haram, and some people saying it is makruh and jais. That means really the verdict depends on the context, type of music, and other situations, which I will shortly mention to you. So the source of the controversy with music is due to its believed conflict with the values and beliefs of Islam. So music is believed to lead us to idleness and neglect of our religious duties. So some types of music are also associated with unlawful activities in Islam, such as consumption of alcohol, addictive behavior, fornication, etc., etc. And then we go on in terms of to investigate the status of music in Islam. Basically, one would have to consult the sources of authority in Islam. The most authoritative source would be the Holy Quran. So the Holy Quran is the most authoritative source in Islam because it is the word of God passed on to Prophet Muhammad to pass on to his followers. But the difficulty is in interpreting the Quran as music is not mentioned per se. As such, the main source of authority in Islam consulted over the status of music has been and continues to be the Hadith literature. So, Hadith literature comprises of narrations on the traditions and behaviors of the Prophet Muhammad, which are used as example, as guide, and a point of reference for determining right and wrong in Islam. So there are numerous compilations of the hadith and traditions of the Prophet Muhammad, and hadith literature varies in authenticity. Of course, authenticity would be a concern because each tradition mentioned in the hadith literature would have been passed on from the witness from the time of the Prophet. So, you know, that centuries of passing on of what happened a long, long time ago. So, authenticity is an issue with hadith literature. But the most accepted hadith literature are Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, which constitutes now the main reference for discussion on music in Islam. In Islam, we have four schools of law. So Muslims all over the world basically are followers of either of these four schools of law led by Imam Hanafi, Imam Hanbali, or Imam Maliki, or Imam Shafi'i. In Malaysia, we are Muslims in Malaysia are Sunni Muslims, and we follow the teachings and the jurisprudence, or we come under the jurisprudence of Imam Shafi'i. Okay, so another source of authority, at least in investigating the status of music in Islam, is Imam Al-Ghazali. He was a theologian, an Islamic scholar, and also a mystic. He was a Sufi. But importantly, he was a supporter of music and provided clear conditions for musicking in Islam. Now, I'll talk about that later. Now, other sources of authority in Islam, Islamic scholars such as Yusuf Al-Qadawi, Said Hussein Nasser, and many others who have researched and published their work, which also addresses the status of music in Islam. I mentioned a few of them in my presentation today. So here I give you an example of two hadith, two traditions that have been taken from, in both cases, from Sahih Bukhari. So it's one of the two authentic sources, most authentic sources for hadith literature in Islam. So the first one supports, or some people consider the first hadith to support the legality of music, whereas the second one below it, some people, some Muslims believe it supports the illegality of music. First one, Aisha was the youngest wife of the Prophet Muhammad. So she narrates the story of Abu Bakr. So Abu Bakr was the first of four Abbasiyah caliphs. So these are the leaders of Islam who basically inherited Muslim teaching, etc., after the Prophet had passed away. So he was the first caliph. So Aisha narrates the story of Abu Bakr expressing his disapproval upon finding two girls singing the songs of Bu'ath, while Bu'ath is a kind of, a folk song, a type of folk song, while playing the tambourine in Aisha and the Prophet's house when he visited them. Apparently, he said something to the likes of, what are instruments of blasphemy doing in the presence of my Prophet, or something like that. Huh? Aisha narrates that the Prophet, upon hearing Abu Bakr's comment, turned to him and asked him to leave the girls alone and basically to allow them to continue singing and playing as it was the day of Eid. So it Muslims celebrate two main ideal Eids or celebration of Eids. The first one is Idul Fitri, which follows the month of a month of fasting, and then we have Idul Adha, which is where we celebrate the pilgrimage to Mecca. So this particular hadith has been used by many supporters of music to say that the Prophet actually supports music because he didn't. I mean, he disagreed with Abu Bakr when Abu Bakr said that the girls should stop playing, should stop singing and playing the tambourine. The next hadith is actually among all the hadiths that I have read, which are controversial. This one, I think, is the most incriminating for musical instruments. Abu Amir or Abu Malik al-Ashari narrates, from among my followers, there will be some people who will consider illegal sexual intercourse, the wearing of silk, the drinking of alcoholic drinks, and the use of musical instruments as lawful. It is incriminating because the use of musical instruments is mentioned together with illegal sexual intercourse, which is forbidden in Islam. The wearing of silk by men, also forbidden in Islam. The drinking of alcoholic drinks, also forbidden. Okay, so that status of music, as you can see, I'm just going through very quickly. Now we're going to talk about the concept of music in Islam. Of course, if you look at the literature, there's lots to read and to investigate in terms of or to learn from the concept of music. There are various concepts. So I chose a few. I think I chose three or four. Firstly, terminology. I think this is one of the reasons why we are not able to have a good discussion with the legalists or the jurists about the status of music in Islam is because we are not using the same terminology. Because in Arabic, the whole religion of Islam, our Quran, and the Hadith, they're all in Arabic. So there is no term or concept in Arabic that can be equated to music in the Western sense. So, in the Western sense, music basically means all sounds that are organized and sound and silence, all organized sound and silence. Whereas in Islam, if you look at here's a hierarchy, you see the table on the right hand side. This is the hierarchy of sound arts that was created by researcher Lois Ibsen Al-Faruqi. So she investigated music and the concept of music in Islam, and the visual here summarizes her work. And then, according to her, if you look at the left hand side, you'll see that there are non-musica and musica. So if you look at the table, you'll see that actually right at the very top of non-musica is Quranic chant. So in Islam, Quranic chant is the highest form of sound art. So you'll see on now the utmost right outside of the table, you'll see legitimate, controversial, and illegitimate. So legitimate being halal, which well, we don't see a lot of. not for musica at least. And you'll see that what is legitimate on the right side, you look at the left side, they are non-musica, literally translated to English as non-music. Quranic chanting, azan, and poetry with noble themes, family celebration music, occupational music, music that fulfilled certain function, and military music. We're talking about in the Arab world, huh? Were considered non-musical but legitimate and halal acceptable. And then you see the gray line underneath military music. So then you see now on the left, these are musical. And then you see on the right, they are, you have the whole section below basically falls into the categories of controversial and illegitimate. So, what are controversial could be halal, mubah, makruh, and haram. Haram is forbidden, like I mentioned. Makruh could be neither permissible or forbidden. Um, what's this? And halal is permissible. So again, it could be permissible, but it's controversial because it really depends on context, niyat, and other things as well, not just the music per se. So, and these are the controversial musical genres, which are vocal, instrumental improvisations, also used in prayers, in fact, but there are cultures and practices which come with these musical genres, what's this, which make it, open it to being forbidden as well. And then there are serious metered songs. So these are muwasha. These are a lot of like traditional music from the Arab world, and then music related to pre-Islamic or non-Islamic origins. So this is also controversial and suspect because even in Malaysia, for example, we have a lot of our traditional music is based on Indian or Hinduism. Our shadow puppet play, for example, the script, is based on Indian folklore, etc. And then a mantra has to be recited before a shadow puppet play performance happens, and all of this is controversial in Islam. And then we have religious chants, and religious chants such as azan, the call for prayer, tahlil, tabiyah. These are all the musical genres. Of actually, we don't in Islam we don't call them music; we call them sound art genres. Yes, because sound music, because of the issue with the terminology, if you say it's musical, then automatically there's like a block because people are thinking that it's music, so it's not it's controversial, it's not acceptable. So we usually say sound arts. So the in bracket we have azan, tahlil, tabiyah, tabirat, midr, tasbih, and tahmid. So those are sound art genres. And then we have chanted poetry with noble themes. And then family celebration music, of which there's lullabies, women's song, wedding songs, songs that are sung and performed at weddings and family celebrations, etc. Occupational music, such as chants while working, shepherds tunes, people who are working with the animals, with cows, and they have what's this? They have their songs. So in which case, both songs. So these are considered to be non-musica, and then of course military music. So all of that are considered non-musica and legitimate or halal. Underneath, then you see the gray line. So we have the musica sound arts. And the musica sound arts are controversial. So the verdicts for these controversial sound arts could be halal, they could be mubah, they could be makruh, or they could be haram, which is forbidden. And those sound art genres include vocal and instrumental improvisations such as layali, avaz, takasim, ikhtibar. So these are sound arts that actually happen even in, I mean, we do have prayer sessions where we recite some of these sound arts, but again, it is the context of the music. Sometimes it goes on all the, from night until morning, etc. So there are issues with that makes it controversial. Okay, then underneath the vocal instrumental improvisations would be serious metered songs. So these are muwashaha. So these are a little bit more secular, and they have instrumental music as well. Yeah. So again, the and below it, music related to pre-Islamic or non-Islamic origin. So all these three then come under the category of controversial, and they are musica. And right at the bottom, where you have another, it's a solid, two lines there, not gray area as the one before, right? Between non-musica and musica. So these kinds of music are clearly illegitimate or forbidden, and they are sensuous music associated with unacceptable contexts. So the contexts are what I mentioned earlier. Um, where the music is happening while they are people are drinking alcohol, and then they are inappropriate behavior, men and women in behavior, etc., uh, and so on. Okay, so I shall move on to the next slide. So a second concept of music in Islam that's helpful to understand what's this how Islam looks upon uh, or music in general is the status of musicians. So in Islam, the hierarchy of approval and disapproval towards musicians corresponds with the hierarchy of accepted and unacceptable musical genres in Islam. So it's what I showed you earlier. It's called the Handasa al Sound, or the hierarchy of sound arts in Islam, that table on the previous slide. So approval or disapproval of a musician depends on, and the music that the musician plays depends on the type of performance material and context in which the performance occurs. And this is according to Al-Faruqi. And the next condition is the three types of contexts, and this is mentioned by Imam Al-Ghazali, which I had introduced you earlier. So according to Al-Ghazali, that there are three contexts which determines whether a music, a sound art is permissible or not permissible in Islam. The first context is Zaman, and Zaman is time. So time is when is the music happening? When is the event happening? When is the activity happening? Is it happening like during the call of prayer, for example, or during a prayer time? Or so time is one of the contexts that determines the permissibility or otherwise of a sound art. The other context or type of context is makan. So in Malay, makan means eating, but this is not eating, this is place. So where the music is happening, where you are performing the music, where you are listening to the music. So if you are listening to the music, or you are in a pub, for example, people are drinking around you, you're not drinking, but you are listening to a performer perform in a place where other people are drinking, so then it becomes questionable in terms of permissibility in Islam. And the third type of context is ikhwan. Ikhwan is associates. So associates basically mean who are the people that you are musicking with. So who are the people that you are playing with, you're performing with, you're singing with, who are the audience, yeah, etc. So let's say, I'll just give you an example. So we have a school choir, performing in a school hall or a concert hall. Um, it could be, I mean, it's highly likely that it is permissible because it fits, okay, it fits the associates, if the audience would be parents mostly, family members, teachers, community, other students. Yeah, so it meets the requirement or the context of associate. In terms of the place, it's a suitable place because it's school hall or a concert hall designated for performances. Now, time, it would suit or it would be permissible if the concert was held at, let's say, right after our last prayer. So our last prayer, the fifth prayer of the day, is at 8:30 p.m. Of course, the time varies because it depends on the, our prayer times depends on the movement of the sun uh, and the moon. So right now, our last prayer is about 8:05. It's very early. Sorry, 8:11. Yes, p.m. That's the last prayer. So sometimes it goes a bit later, right, depending on the time of the year and all that stuff. So then, in which case, now, for example, we would have, let's say, we want to have an evening concert, we would have our concert at 8:30 p.m. Now, if we had our concert exactly at 8 o'clock or 8:10, we decide, we say it's 8 o'clock, but our concert starts a little bit later. So then it becomes then questionable, the status or the verdict of that event because it doesn't fulfill the context of time. Huh? Yeah. So if the choir is performing in the concert hall in the school hall, it's fine. But let's say we take the performance of the choir or the choir to a different venue where there are people drinking. There's what's this? People are drinking alcohol, not drinking water. Drinking water is fine. So in that case, if people are drinking alcohol, it's prohibited in Islam, and free mixing. Among men and women. So that is also controversial and questionable. So again, these contexts come into play. There is another condition which I mentioned earlier, which I will highlight again here, is besides these three types of contexts, there is also the condition of niyat. Now, niyat is the closest English equivalent to niyat is intention. But I think it's a little bit deeper. Niyat, I think it's a little bit deeper than intention because niyat is sort of like you in your heart of hearts know the reason you're doing something or the reason you are not doing something. Only you know, and you know in your heart of hearts. So it's deeper than just knowing. Yeah. So if your niyat, if your deep intention is to, let's say, as music, I'm a music educator, so I take my students out and we are competing, right? So if my intention is to give students exposure, experience in performing, etc., so my niyat would possibly be consonant in Islam. But if my niyat, my intention or my deep intention is to you know, um, show off my school, show off my work, show off myself, maybe, right, to show how great I am. And then, there comes a solo part, then I am singing the solo part, etc. So then it becomes questionable. So again, only we know. So this is very much at the individual level. Okay, so let's go on. So another concept of music in Islam was this is looking at the position of arts. So it's not just so how the arts are perceived in Islam also affects the position of the concept of music in Islam or how music is perceived. Okay, so here, according to Nasser, Said Hussein Nasser, there is an overlap in the way in which music and art are regarded in Islam. According to Abbas, Islamic arts are fine, beautiful, and harmonious or pleasing. So you can get an idea of what kind of arts um, would be valued in Islam. According to the Sahih Muslim, again, this is from Hadith literature, passed on from the traditions and narratives of the behavior of what the Prophet Muhammad had said. So, according to Sahih Muslim, for God is ever beautiful and He loves beauty. So, many people use this particular hadith also to support the position of music in Islam because God is beautiful and He loves all beautiful things. So, music, and not all music, but not all music are beautiful, is beautiful. Okay, so then Ismail and Shamsuddin um, uh, says, state that an art which is not beautiful, pure, useful, and good is not viewed or valued as an art in Islam. So this reinforces what I mentioned earlier. Okay, so here's the work of Al-Faruqi again. So she talks about factors and core characteristics of sound arts in Islam. And some of these factors and core characteristics actually overlap with the other arts in Islam as well. I'll show you, I might mention a few, especially the core characteristics in a little while. So let's look at factors. So there is an extreme persists the existence of an extreme sense of unity between genre types, which rejects the separation of music according to its type. So, for example, in generally, what we know of the arts is that there is secular and religious, classical and popular, art and folk, but there is no sense of that um, in Islam. So all Islamic arts are basically, again, then leading to the second point, lacking of precise contexts for performance of an art. So in which case this means basically that art or particular sound art can be performed in many different contexts. For example, the Quranic chant, which is supposed to be the most supreme sound art in Islam. So maybe the Quranic chant may be performed in formal gatherings. It can be performed, recited at festive occasions, or even during individual prayer. So there is no uh, a place, a designated place where each of the Islamic sound art can needs to be performed. It's across the board. It's so the lack of the sense of unity between the existence of an extreme sense of unity between the genre types. Okay, then the third point, as a result of the preceding, the sense of unity and lack of precise context, there exists less distinction between performers of different musical genres in Islamic culture. So we don't have like musicians of not we. Islam does not have pop. You perform pop music only, or you perform only classical music. You perform Islamic music. In Islam, if you are a musician, then you would be performing all the musical genres. Huh? And this is again, according to Al-Faruqi from her research in Islamic sound arts. So the last factor is Islamic arts are not limited, to a privileged audience, but are aesthetically available and accessible to everyone. So it's not just a limited privileged few who can access Islamic arts, but it's actually for everyone. Everyone can um, experience Islamic arts. So Al-Faruqi also puts forth 6 factors which he believed constitute the core characteristics of Islamic arts, abstract and non-programmatic. So this doesn't just apply for music, but you can see also in Islamic paintings, for example, you don't have what do you call it? Figures, figure of human or figure of animals or insects. We don't have that, um, but it's just abstract, and non-programmatic. Doesn't refer to anything that actually is alive and it exists. And modular structure. So it's based on a small module, and it is the core characteristic, addictive and repetitive at every level of performance. So you could have like a statement of a module, and then you would have it repeated many times, and then you could have it expanded, the module expanded, but again, it is repeated. So, and then repetitive rather than sustained. So that's another characteristic of Islamic some arts. Next is narrow range, um, conjunct rather than disjunct, multiplied melodic lines, so a lot of melisma, um, density of activity, many things, basically it's melody happening at the same time. A non-developmental form, so it's not like development, um, where you would have a development of the a motive or theme or the module, but it's just repetitive. And there is a great deal of intricacy through use of melisma and ornamental melodies and rhythmic figures. Huh? Okay, so then I'd like to just go through with you some discussion themes when we're discussing the topic of music in Islam. Um, what's this? There are themes that, in general, we look at. So I'm going through this very quickly because I see here that it's already 4:40. I guess I've been talking too slowly, so I shall pick up the speed a bit. So this is sama polemic. Sama basically means listening or audition. What's this at first? Initially, sama was used to refer to the listening of the Quran, but now it's come to mean basically listening to all musics, all sound arts. So the debate concerning the position of music in Islam can be found in the Sama polemic, and the debate is actually between the Sufis and the legalists, or the legalists and the jurists are the people basically who talk a lot about the law and the legality of using music in Islam, etc. Now, the Sufis, they are supporters of music because they use a lot of music in their worship. They have zikir, and then if you know of the whirling dervishes, so they actually, the prayer session is zikir, repeating of prayers, and they would be swirling, and that movement would be repeated many, many, many times for many hours, and after a while, again, it is the Sufis believe that they are able to transcend spiritually and be connected with God through this their zikir. Okay, so next slide is music and poetry. So that's actually a lot of overlap between music and poetry in Islam. In fact, before the coming of Islam, you couldn't separate. One could not separate music and poetry. And poetry, in a way, let poetry influence the growth of music. So a musician, so to speak, during the pre-Islamic time, and the skill was not measured by his or her, it's his mostly at that time, not measured only by his musical abilities, but according to his knowledge of poetry. So, unfortunately, poetry, after the coming of Islam, poetry still continued to be uh, practiced. And until today, poetry is considered to be the one of the greatest heritage of the Arabs. But music became controversial because of the culture that came with music making, and that's music was performed in taverns, um, by Muhanna. Muhanna is effeminate male singer, male singers, and then also sung by Kena, and Kena girls, singing girls of questionable reputation, again in pubs and clubs. Well, not the club that we know today, but of that time. So, so in which case, despite the closest association between music and poetry in Islam, music, unlike poetry, has not been regarded in the same favor. Now, various verses in the Quran and traditions in the Hadith stress the importance and value of reciting the Quran. So I'll read a few of this. Maybe I'll read them all, depending. Let's see what I can do now. The best of you, this is according to Nelson, Christina Nelson, who did the study on the cantillation of Quran. She said that the best of you is he, not she said, sorry, she cited this. The best of you is he who learns and teaches the Quran. And the superior worship of my community, Ummah, is the tilawah of the Quran. Tilawah of the Quran. Tilawah is the singing of the Quran. But in Islam, we don't have scales. We have makam. So makam is some kind of a melodic system, and it's based on microtonal mm, uh, tones. Anyway, next, Abu Huraira, this comes from a hadith, narrates that the Prophet had said, Allah never listens to anything as he listens to the Prophet reciting Quran in a pleasant, sweet sounding voice. So it was that God liked best to listen to the Prophet reciting Quran. And then Islamic religious authorities insist that the tradition of Quranic recitation and music be kept separate. So again, referring to the hierarchy of sound arts, cantillation of Quran. If you are not a Muslim, you listen to it, you would say that it is music. But no Muslim ever designates Quranic recitation as musika, and no one in the culture would fail to maintain a mental and actual distinction and separation of the two. Okay, so the use of musical instruments, I think I can skip this because I already mentioned the hadith, the incriminating hadith earlier. So very quickly, I don't know how I ended up with being out of time. I'm about to run out of time. So some implications for music and music education in Malaysia. So we have out of our 34.2 million population, 69% are Bumiputras, of which the bulk of the population are Malays, and Malays are Muslims. So Malaysia is a Muslim nation. Islam is our religion of the federation. It's mandated or it's stipulated in the constitution, but there is a religious diversity in the country. So we practice, in Malaysia, we practice the moderate form of Islam. So we are Sunni Muslims, and we practice wasatiyah. We are moderates. Coexistence of Islamic principles with national values like unity and multiculturalism, because we have other races in Malaysia. So I mentioned earlier about the fatwa, the verdict that has been passed by our National Fatwa Council on music. So no reward if done, but no sin if not done. So nasheed is actually our most popular Islamic musical genre. So in Malaysia, we have different types of nasheed, but they can all be divided into two main types. One is the traditional nasheed. So it sounds very much like the Arabic nasheed, the nasheed in the Arab world. And then we have the contemporary nasheed. So this sounds like popular music with Islamically consonant lyrics. So this is what I'm going to show you. I have an example of the azan, and then you can actually see the muazzin. The person who does the call for prayer is called the muazzin. So he would be doing the call in his most beautiful voice. In order, again, the point is to make it so beautiful that people will stop everything that they're doing and come to prayer.
صلى عليك الله يا عدناني يا مصطفى يا صفوة الرحمن الحمد لله الذي أعطاني هذا الغلام الطيب الأرداني هذا الغلام الطيب الأرداني قد ساد في المهدي على الغلمان أعيذه بالبيت ذي الأركان حتى أراه بالغ البنيان أنت الذي سميت في القرآن أنت الذي سميت في القرآن.
What's this? Some implications for music in Malaysia due to the position or the status of music in Islam. So I share a few. So in the first was this shadow puppet play is actually banned. It's one of our traditional Malaysian music. It's banned in the state of Kelantan. Kelantan is a state that's located in the east coast of Peninsular Malaysia, and it's banned because of its pre-Islamic roots and performance practice, which is felt to be not consonant to Islamic beliefs. And but people are still, doing shadow puppet play because it's done in the village. It's a communal thing. Families do it, and they do it at night, and the music making goes on till morning. But they are not allowed to perform shadow puppet play. Not in the state of Kelantan. And there are also strict rules for live performances in Malaysia in terms of dress code, conduct, repertoire, lyrics. So, a few months ago, Lady Gaga came and visited, did a concert in our region. But, of course, she bypassed most of the pop stars, they bypassed Malaysia. So, any Malaysians interested in attending those concerts have to fly to Singapore. Yeah, because we are very strict. Well, the government is very strict about dress code and what you say, what you do, what you dance, how you dance and perform on stage, etc. So license and permit to bring in a foreign act also can be revoked anytime due to public dissatisfactions, complaints. So sometimes an event organizer maybe would have planned for, let's say, Beyonce to come, but then somebody it's mentioned they're selling tickets and some people decide that Beyonce shouldn't be performing in Malaysia because maybe she's too sexy. So then, in which case, what she wears and how she sings might be in contradiction of Islamic values, and so then the license can be revoked even on the day of the concert itself. So there's some implications there. And censorship, strict guidelines for content, things that go on radio and TV, etc. But of course, now it's not as bad as before, not as strict as before, because with internet, basically people can access anything. So it makes no sense to sort of like blurb, what's this, a movie, or a bad word or something, in a movie. So there's less censorship. Yeah. Okay, what are the implications for music education? So I feel it the most because that's my area, right? So music became compulsory in all our primary schools in 1983, but within a few years, the government had to get a private group to actually investigate what was happening with music in primary schools. So after the investigation, then what's this? The ministry introduced guidelines for the teaching of music in the school. So some of the guidelines include music should not, or music education should not lead Muslims to forget their prayers. So lessons cannot happen during prayer times or rehearsals, not during prayer times. The use of music with wholesome lyrics, which advise and educate. Separating boys and girls in class, music class activities, emphasizing on moral and cultural appropriateness, etc. So I think the most damaging for, the biggest implication for music education and the most damaging would be perception. And that's not by the ministry, but it's also by public. So in terms of the ministry, management, policies, etc., are not favorable to music. And so we now, right now, what we have is just 30 minutes of music in primary schools. We used to have 1 hour. 1 hour was short enough, but now it's even shorter. But music is the only subject in our primary schools that just has 30 minutes. um, Negative public perception towards music, because again, people think, or some people think, not everyone, but some people think that music is believed to, lead to idleness and neglect and of religious duties as well. So then, in which case, it affects funding, financial support for music education, and the like. I have some snapshots. I think people can read this. So these are my, personal experiences, which I think is interesting because here I have three snapshots. So this one is to show actually how the status of music in Islam actually comes to play in our daily life of managing music, educating people, etc. So in this case, it's a bank, a local bank, agrees to be a main sponsor of a dinner concert that I wanted to organize, and it would have meant, a lot of money for us. But we have a meeting, and at that meeting, the bank of corporate office, regretfully announced that the sponsorship had to be cancelled because the Islamic Department Affairs of the Department of Islamic Affairs of the bank had actually rejected the sponsorship for us, and it is because our dinner concert would be featuring female pop singers who do not wear the hijab. So, and here's the story of Jamil. Jamil, the book supplier, one of my students. So he was a music teacher in a primary school before he came to study at my university. So he had students always coming to class without the recorder. Recorder is a musical instrument. So, one day, he was tired of this because, how can you have a recorded class and not have the students bring recorder to play? So then one day he told the students, you must bring your recorder to the next music class. So if you don't have it already, please get your parents to buy it for you. And the next day, he tells me that there was a parent waiting for him. So he's on his way back home. He's leaving the school and he's on a bicycle. So then the parent chases him with a parang, and parang is it's a long knife, and that really scared Jamil off. And he actually, the parent was angry and he scolded Jamil because he said that Jamil was trying to force him into buying the recorder for his child and wanting to lead his child astray from the straight path of becoming a good Muslim. So after which Jamil decided to quit his job as a school teacher. Then he came to us and did his bachelor degree, and then he became a book supplier, and he never went back to teaching again. I attend a meeting to discuss, and this is at the Ministry of Education, the fully residential schools division of the Ministry of Education. They have the top schools, and they have the best students, the students who have the best results in the nation. So what's this one of the, but they have a very strong wind orchestra program because, well, they don't want their students to become musicians, but they understand the value of music education. So they want to do this holistic engineers, doctors, lawyers, etc. So this meeting was to discuss was this the finale wind orchestra of the wind orchestra competition, which was going to be attended by the Queen. So one of the agenda was whether to, people were deciding whether to recite a a prayer at the beginning of the event, and this is what we do very often. when we have an event, we recite a dua, a prayer, to seek God's blessings for the event so that everything will go smoothly. So then the attendees, they comprise of the principals of these elite schools. So then they sought the advice of an ustaz who happened to have been invited to the meeting. So he advised for the dua to not be recited at the beginning of the wind orchestra finale. And I asked why. Then he said because it was a music event. Of course, I had a lot more to say after that, but to no avail because in the end, no prayer was said before the wind orchestra finale. So here, I'm just going to show you. This is towards the end of my presentation. I show you some of our efforts to bridge music in Islam. It's so unfortunate because I'll tell you the first one is our school choir, university choir, we call it the UITM Chamber Choir. So they sing a piece that was arranged by Dr. Ethan Sperry, who is professor at Portland University. So it is zikir. So zikir is definitely one of zikir is a non-musical. So they sing it in it's a women's choir. So then it's in SSA, and then they have movements, etc. that goes with it, and we believe it's consonant. They're fully uh, well, they're in suitable attire. That's what I'm trying to say. Huh? So it would have been nice to show you, but I hope that the audience will get a copy of this so that you can look at this and see some of the things that we are doing, that we are going ahead with, to try to bridge music and Islam, and it's not easy, and there's no way. We're not trying to make music consonant Islam. We're not trying to force people to accept, but we are trying to be able to to express ourselves and trying to be able to get our students, students of our students, kids, children in schools, etc., to be able to access music education so that they can appreciate music, and they won't miss out on what's so beautiful and so special about music and why humans need to have music. And then it's followed by two compositions again by people I know. It's a husband and wife team. So the husband composed the first um, piece, and it's an excerpt. And the second piece was composed by his wife. So the first piece is actually a prayer. It's a cantillation of the Quran, and it's very short. It's just like maybe less than a minute. And then it's followed by classical piano. So I think it's very interesting how some of us are trying to connect our identity as a Muslim with music, our identity as a musician and performer as well. And the last piece, composed by Hajarul, is it's gambus. Gambus is the equivalent of the oud in the Islamic world. It's a kind of a guitar, yes, but not the guitar. It's a lute, actually. It's closest to the lute. So it's the gambus using the makam, playing with the piano, performing with the piano, and they are playing makam nahawan. And makam nahawan is one of the melodic systems or the microtonal systems, which I mentioned earlier, that's used in Arabic music. Lastly, be guided. So we are guided, and we tell our students to be guided by what I mentioned earlier, niyat, in whatever that we are doing in our music, teaching music, composing music, performing music, etc. Be guided by niyat, our deepest intention and sincerity, that intention. And Al-Ghazali's Makan, Ikhwan, and Zaman. And that will guide us, because in the end, it's not what people think what we are doing. I mean, it's not people who are judging what we are doing, but we who need to be sure, if we are Muslims, and many of us in Malaysia, or the people that I've mentioned, or I've showed the music of, or I tried to show, but it wouldn't play, or at all. But anyway, we try our best to be good Muslims, and in the end, we answer to ourselves as well, and we want to be the best Muslim that we can. Thank you, and I provide my email address so that if people wish to communicate with me, they can. Thank you so much for listening and being interested in music in Islam.
Ramona, I just want to say thank you for introducing us, I think most of us, to a world of which we know very little, and being so generous as to say that you will share your email address and people can be in contact and they will be able to receive the videos, and those who are interested can continue to follow the topic and to even be in contact with you. So thanks very much indeed.
Most
Thank you.
welcome. Thank you.